Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Nova Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about some new releases that came out at the end of January and some new releases that are coming out at the beginning of February. Now, I was able to read arcs of some of these books, and some of these books I just picked up on release day, and I want to tell you if I think those are worth the read for you. I do like doing these videos. I feel like you guys really get my honest thoughts about these books, and a lot of these books I'm going to talk about I did enjoy reading, but I'm going to tell you why I think they were perfect for me, why they may not be perfect for every single person who's going to pick them up. So before we dive into all the books that I want to talk about in today's video, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, and that is Larissa Ione. Larissa has a brand new book called Legacy of Temptation. It is out today on February 6th. This is a romantic fantasy with a lot of forbiddenness in it. Our female character, Eva, is basically the spokesperson for this demon-slaying group, and our main male character, Logan, is basically Death's son, and he works with the rival agency, which is the Demon Activity Response Team, which is the acronym is DART. So after her promotion as the spokesperson kind of goes south, she realizes that there's all these demons that are coming after her, and Logan basically says, hey, I'll help you out, I'll protect you from these people that are coming after you. And they just, when they're forced together like that, they just cannot help the attraction that they have for each other. With all these demons coming after her and now Logan, because he's trying to protect her, they just have to band together. They can't just, they can't be apart from each other. So this is a dark and twisty romantic fantasy set in the Demonica series, which takes place 30 years after Ione's previous novel, Reaper. Like I said, this forbidden romantic fantasy is on sale today, February 6th. You can pick up the paperback, ebook, whatever, however you read. It is available now. I'll have the link in the description box below if you are in your romantasy era. And if you want to pick up this romantic fantasy, I highly suggest you do. So the first book that I want to talk about and go ahead and get out the way, because I know a lot of people have read it. A lot of people are asking if they should pick it up. And I feel like it's the book that I have the most thoughts on, and that is House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. So I personally, as a reader, am a huge fan of Sarah J. Maas's writing. I love the world that she's created with these characters in Crescent City. I love her previous Throne of Glass series and previous ACOTAR series. Now, I will say, out of all of her series, this is the most fantasy-heavy series. Crescent City has a lot of fantasy in it, and there's a lot to keep up with. I do have a whole guide to Sarah J. Maas. I'll link it in the cards and the description box below, where I really dive into where I think that you should read Crescent City and if Crescent City is right for you. But in summary, basically, if you are someone who really enjoys fantasy, then you should pick up this book. If you enjoy a, continuous series where you follow the same characters and multiple characters, multiple point of view, and the story lasts over books, then this series is for you. And I think that you would enjoy this book. If you have never read Sarah J. Maas before, I don't particularly think that you should pick up this series. I will say that if you have not read Sarah J. Maas previously, I think that you should pick up the ACOTAR series first. That's just personal opinion. I say that in that video. But with this book, it's just so fantasy driven, character driven. There's a lot going on. It's very fast paced. From page 1 with this book, you jump into the action, and it doesn't stop going till the end of the book. I was extremely exhausted after reading this book, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the above. You really go through it with this book. I personally rated this book 5 stars. I do know a lot of people have opinions on little things that happen throughout the book, but I love all the characters in here, and I really like this story that was told with this series and with this book. I don't know if she's going to write another book after this in the Crescent City series. I know some people say yes, that she's alluded to that, but she really wraps up a lot of stuff in this book. So I personally don't know where she's going, but I will say that if you've read Crescent City 1, in my opinion, Crescent City 2, House of Sky and Breath, and House of Flame and Shadow, Crescent City 3, are better books than the first book. So I will say, like I say with Throne of Glass, get through the first 2 books and things really start to pick up. Same thing with this series. Once you get past the first book, while that is a little bit slow and a lot of the action happens at the end of the book, I think it's worth the read to continue on. If you did, at least give Crescent City 1 3 or 4 stars. I think it's worth continuing. Now, like I said, if you've never read this series, I wouldn't say pick it up right now. I would say pick up other Sarah J. Maas series first. But with all that being said, I personally thought that this lived up to the hype. I did not see any spoilers. I really didn't have any expectation, because I like to have theories for Sarah J. Maas, but I never actually think that my theories are going to come true. So I just went along for the ride in this book, and I personally really enjoyed it. that was a lot of thoughts, but overall I gave it 5 stars. But I do know that not everyone absolutely loves Sarah J. Maas, and that's totally okay. I'm just someone that I personally really enjoyed it. The next book I want to talk about is actually one that comes out on February 6th, and that is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. So I was able to receive an ARC from Berkeley for this, and I did read this for an exclusive Patreon reading vlog that's over on my Patreon. If you join, you can watch my full thoughts. But I will say that I am someone that Ali Hazelwood's books previously have not worked for me. I really liked The Love Hypothesis, but after that, I just felt like they were pretty boring books. Like I didn't really have any desire to pick any of the other ones up in her contemporary. Now, I will say I wanted to give Ali Hazelwood one last shot with this paranormal romance series that she is creating and starting and writing in now, because I'm someone, I do love paranormal romance when written well. And I will say that I gave this book 4 stars. Is it the most perfect paranormal romance I've read? No. But I think that she blends her writing of, her rom-com-y stuff, how like she normally does that, and the banter that she puts in her books. I think she blends that well with this paranormal romance that she created. Now, our female character is a vampire. You see that she's been not living in the vampire world. She's been living in the human world after her best friend, who is human, completely goes missing. And she's like, I have no idea where this bitch went. Like, I don't know what's going on. And she's like, I gotta figure out what happened to her. And her father calls her home to her vampire kingdom and is like, hey, you gotta marry the werewolf from our enemies. Basically, I'm putting you in arranged marriage. And she's like, why? It's basically a political alliance type thing. And I actually enjoyed the read. Like I said, it wasn't perfect. There were some pacing issues that I had with the book. I felt like she could have reorganized some of the chapters a little bit, because it did go past to present a little bit. But I did think it was a tad too long. Like I'm being very critical with this book, because I'm pointing out every single thing why I gave it 4 stars. But I did like the way the ending played out. I did like the little surprise plot twist that, you may or may not have seen coming. She alluded to it a little bit, but as someone who doesn't always pick up on those type of clues, I really just go into the book just reading and enjoying the experience. I had an inkling of what might happen, and I was right. And it was a fun ride. Like, I had a very good time reading it. I like that she set up the next book in this series, which I didn't know it was going to be a series. But basically, she set up what the next couple is going to be, which I was very interested in those 2 characters, because you just find out things about those characters. So I would say this is worth the read if you have never read Ali Hazelwood and you're a fan of paranormal romance. Just know that she blends the rom-com-y way that she normally does with her contemporary romances with the paranormal. So I'll let you do with that what you will, but I did enjoy the ride. It was a fun read. I have not read the audiobook. I don't know if the audiobook's going to be good, but I did physically read it and it was good. The next 3 books I want to talk about are all January releases. The first one I want to talk about is Twilight of Embers by Tessa Hale. So I am someone, like I said, I'm getting more into the paranormal world after reading Bride, after reading Twilight of Embers. Like, I want to read more paranormal, right? And I think that's just because I've been in this fantasy mood, that it's always nice to go from a heavy fantasy romance to a paranormal romance where it's a little bit lighter with world building, right? Now, I am not a why choose person. I don't always like why choose romances, but I will say if you are someone who enjoys why choose romances, I think that you would enjoy Twilight of Embers. This was my first book by Tessa Hale. The audiobook narration is absolutely amazing. It has a full cast narration. Each of the 5 guys has a separate narrator, and our female character has obviously a different narrator. Now, this book opens up with Hayden. She's going to this college. She doesn't really know all too much about the paranormal aspect, and she finds out that when she meets Knox, that's the first guy she meets that's in her classes and stuff like that. She runs into him on campus. She's like, ooh, I feel something towards him. Like, I kind of like him. And then she meets another person, another one. She meets another one of the guys and another one. And she finds out that they're all kind of bonded to her in this way. And they're all dragon shifters. And she, at the time, doesn't know that she's also a dragon shifter. It's something just that, like, hasn't been awoken. It just hasn't been awoken inside of her yet. So this is the first book in a trilogy. Now, I do know some people will say, oh, well, why did she break it up into a trilogy? Like, the book's relatively short. It's like less than 300 pages, I will say. I personally loved the pacing. I thought it, like, for me, with Why Choose Romances, I've realized that I need a really good explanation and just, like, development of all the characters, because then I just want her to be with one specific one. Now, this one, she has a relationship and a friendship with each individual guy. 2 out of the 3 guys do not like her, just don't want to be around her. And that's kind of left open at the end of the book. This does end on a major cliffhanger. The next book I think is coming out in April, if I'm not mistaken. But I will say that I did enjoy the read. as someone who needs that kind of long-winded explanation of like why she wants to be with these 5 guys, I don't mind that this book is a trilogy and it's a little bit longer when, you know, some people say it could be just in one book. Fair critique, but I'm throwing it all out there just in case you want to know. But I had a super, super fun time with this book. I popped in the audiobook. I listened to it in basically a day. It was fast paced. You're meeting all the guys, you know, chapter by chapter. You have this underlying dragon shifter drama happening all while she's just trying to go to college and live her life. You know what I mean? And just try to work and make money. So I thought it was a fun time. I enjoyed it. I had the best time reading it. Like I said, it was just like a really fun time. I don't know how else to describe it. It was a fun time and I want to keep reading on in this series. Now, the next book I want to talk about came out, I think, on January 25th, and that is The Summer You Found Me by Elizabeth O'Rourke. So I did listen to an advanced listener copy of this book, and I will say that out of this series, this book really let me down. So this is the 3rd book in this series, and the first book is The Summer We Fell. I loved that book. I gave it 5 stars. I thought the angst was there. I loved the story. I loved the past to present. It was like kind of like a second chance, very angsty, all of the above, right? I skipped the second book because I didn't see that many ratings, good or bad. So I was like, whatever. It follows a different couple. Now, I don't know if that hindered me reading this book, but the female character, Kate, in The Summer You Found Me, is the ex-wife of the hero from the second book. So they're going through a divorce and stuff like that, and he finds someone else that's younger. I think she's a single mom, and you see that he kind of is like the villain in her eyes in this book because she gets out of rehab for addiction, and she finds out that her husband has moved on, and he's like, no, I want a divorce. I don't even want to try and get back to you. So it's this whole drama that kind of spans the second and the third book, like goes into this book. So I didn't feel lost. I just felt I wish I had that like background. Now, our female character, Kate, there are some trigger warnings for talk of losing a child. She loses a child with her ex-husband, and that kind of tailspins her into this addiction, into this path of addiction. And it's hard to read, I'm not gonna lie. And she is supposed to be a character that when you start reading her, you do not like. You just do not like how she is, how she talks. But then steps in our main male character, and I will say that I did enjoy him. He brought this kind of light to her life. Like, he's been the best friend of her ex-husband for a while. Like, they've been friends for a while. And so now it's like finally their time. He's like, you know, I liked you, but you chose him. So now it's like our chance to kind of, you know, see what would happen. And they kind of have this romance. And I just felt like with everything else that Elizabeth O'Rourke put into the book, I just felt like the romance took a like 3rd, 4th, 5th seat in the story. And I felt like at the end of the book, I was like, I mean, yeah, they probably like each other, but I don't truly believe that they really loved each other. Especially on her part. It's one of those things where I feel like she didn't really deserve him. I just feel like he was a really good guy. Now, I gave this book 3.5 stars. Like, Elizabeth O'Rourke can still write really well, which is why I gave it at least 3.5 stars. I just felt like the story was very jarring and jagged. Like, you were thrown back and forth. You see her trying to be a good person, but then you see her kind of slip back into her being a bad person and being caught up with drama and, you know, other bad people, I guess you could say. So I felt really conflicted with that, so I landed at a 3.5 star. So I don't know if I'm ever going to go back and read the second book just because I didn't like how he was presented in this book, which I know he's supposed to be the villain in this book. And obviously he's the hero in the second book, so I don't know. I feel conflicted. I don't know if I'm going to continue on this series. Those are my thoughts on that one. I would say, I don't know if it's worth the read. I don't think so. I would say no. I would say like this is a release that you could probably skip and you don't have to read it, you know what I mean? But if it's a premise that is interesting to you or you think you can emotionally connect with our female character, then go ahead and pick it up. But for me, I just felt like I was like disconnected from the story because you're supposed to not like her at the beginning, and I don't think that Elizabeth O'Rourke really like bridged that gap to where you start to like her again. Another new release that came out in January was Loving Romeo by Laura Pavlov. So this book is the first book in her like new series. It's Magnolia something, I can't think of the name. This whole series, you can tell right off the bat, follows a group of guys that they are brothers, but they are like, it's a found family aspect. So one is a boxer, and we get Romeo's story in Loving Romeo, obviously. One's a lawyer, one's a single dad, another guy and the single dad own a construction company together. So you have like all of these guys that kind of like have over the years since they were younger in high school have built this found family when their families weren't like the best for them. I loved that aspect. That was one of my absolute favorite parts of this book is the found family, and that no matter what was going on, these guys can fall back on like each other. It was so good. Now, this is a hate to love, enemies to lovers romance, which is usually not my favorite, but I really enjoyed it. Demi is I guess you could say spoiled princess in Romeo's eyes. She is the daughter of like a really rich family in this small town, but she has opened up like a bakery coffee shop right next to, it's called Magnolia Beans, right next to Romeo's gym that he buys and takes over. Now, you find out that during the book, he is now basically training for one of the biggest fights of his life. Another boxer is like, egging him on, like saying, hey, you're not going to fight me. Of course, you're not going to fight me. Like, you're too much of a coward. And he's like, fine, I'll do it. I am someone who I absolutely love fighter romances. MMA, boxing, any of the above, I personally love it. I enjoy those. And this is a true, like, athlete sports romance because you see him training day after day. You see that he has to take care of his body. You see that he has to do all of these things, right, to, like, make himself be in like peak fitness level for this fight. And you see that him and Demi have this enemies to friends to lovers aspect. And there was a part at the end of the book that I thought it was going to have a third act breakup, but there is not. So I like to say that when I do find a book that does not have a third act breakup, this one is it. It may seem like that for a second, but it does not have a third act breakup. And I love the story. I love the progression of the characters. I loved, all of her brothers going through things. Or she's going through things with a lot of things with her family. It's a lot of things that are going on. And Romeo's hate that he has for Demi is, like, it makes sense. You get to know why he feels that way and it makes sense. And I thought it was a perfect small town romance and an introduction to a series that I feel like I'm going to absolutely love. So like I said, I love that book and I would highly recommend it. Now I have two books that I want to talk about that are coming out on February 8th. So when you're seeing this on the 6th, these two books are coming out on Thursday, February 8th, and I did really enjoy both of them. So the first one is Ashes of You by Catherine Cowles. This is a small town romantic suspense book. It is the 5th book in the Lost and Found series. And while I am very sad that this is an end of an era, I really love this book. This book and the 4th book in the series are tied for my favorite books in this series. They're both single parents. So in Ashes of You, Lawson is the single dad. He is the oldest Hartley child. And you see that he's really gone through it with his kids. His kids are a little bit older. I think it's 6, 11, and 15. So they have a wide range of ages. And so they all have like different things going on in their life. Like they're all at different ages and they all need different things. And so Lawson decides to bring in this nanny. And this nanny he actually has known in the past. I don't want to say what. You find out in the prologue, like immediately how they're connected. But I love Hallie's anxiety representation in here. She has a lot of like PTSD anxiety. And it was so real seeing her go through like multiple panic attacks, and they're warranted. Like she goes through a lot in this book, but I love that she never gave up. And so it's this forced proximity. Of course, they're living around each other. There's this undercurrent of suspense of like the who did it, who's after them type thing. Once again, I did not guess who it was. I thought I did. I thought I had it for a second, but I did not. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a really good conclusion. You see all of the other characters and they all kind of lend a hand in this book to different things. And I just thought it was like a really good conclusion to a series that was like near and dear to my heart that I've been reading since the beginning for the last like year and a half now, I feel like. So I would say that one is definitely worth the read if you are a small town girly, if you do love small town, if you do like that romantic suspense type thing, especially if you love the single dad nanny. I will say he's 13 years older than her. So it's a little bit of an age gap. And he has like a little bit of gray hair right here. And I was like, borderline silver fox. I kind of like that. Now the last book I want to talk about is Serpentine Valentine by Gianna Darling. So this book is also coming out on February 8th, and this is a sapphic revenge plot romance. Now I know a lot of people are going to pick this up and they might not like it, but just know that this is a very heavy character-driven book. Both of our female characters go through a lot, and I always say this, as a woman, me personally, I related to both of them in different ways. You see Luna, who is this perfect, astute student going to school. You know what I mean? She is the president's daughter. She is like perfect in every way in the academic sense. And then you see Lex, and there is triggers for on-page rape. It happens pretty early on in the book. And it really tells this story. Lex's story is like what happens to a woman who is not believed in our society. And I feel like it's so important. You know what I mean? Like a lot of women are not believed. That does a lot of damage including on top of everything else that they've had to deal with, you know, like being sexually assaulted. You see Lex, that she's on this end of the spectrum, right? Everyone thinks that she is just nasty and dirty and no one believes her and they call her all these horrible names. But then you see Luna on this end of the spectrum and how she's like this perfect girl. Now, of course, the president of the college did not believe her, so Lex is going to go after Luna because Luna is the president's daughter. So that's where the revenge plot comes in. I would say there is no bully aspect. She has the intention to be mean and bring her down, and that changes once she meets Luna. Now, they both are at separate ends of the spectrum in like their ways, like how they are as people, and they slowly over the book come to a more neutral position together. You know, like Lex goes more towards the light and Luna goes more towards the dark, and I just felt like it was a really, I feel like female empowering story. I don't know how else to describe it, and I really loved that part of it. Of course, the romance was really good. I always loved Gianna's romances. I felt like, to be honest, it's like not the main focus like of this book. I just feel like she wrapped all of these things together in like a really good book that tells a story of female empowerment, of our society and how they don't believe women, of this character development between both of these characters and what they're going through, and you know, one stepping out from under her mother's thumb and the other kind of finding this found family and finding her foot again and finding who she wants to be after this tragedy that she was going through. So there's a lot of different things that I personally enjoyed. Those are the things I did enjoy. But I do know that some people will go into this book thinking it's going to be a Gianna spicy romance. And while it is still a romance, I feel like there's a lot more to it. Now, I will say this book put me in a very big dark academia mood. Like the vibes were perfect. Like Gianna's writing, how flowery and flowy it is perfect for this dark academia setting, which is what this is, and I just think it was perfect. There was just all these things that were just perfect in my eyes for me as a reader, and I really enjoyed it. So I would suggest if you're into sapphic romances, definitely check out this book if you've been wanting to try one. I also think this is very fun. Like I said, dark academia, all the vibes were there, all the vibes. Once again, thank you so much to Larissa Ione for sponsoring this video. Make sure you check out Legacy of Temptation, the first book in the Demonica series, available now. The link is in the description box below for you to check out. For the emoji, drop me a crown emoji. I don't know. I was talking about House of Flame and Shadow in this video, and crowns just are something that comes to mind. So drop me a crown emoji if you've made it this far. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.